off of the blades, and it gets up in the top, blasts it from multiple directions as that drum is spinning. So it hits multiple areas multiple times. Another place of operation, this tower right here, there's a post in there. That table that the tower is sitting on, there's a hinge right there in the front. That hinge, as you can imagine, will allow you to lift the boom, the back of that boom, up in the air, all the way up. There's an actual range, it's escaping me right now, but that's another point of manipulation. Right here, the controls are right where the operator is going to be standing. He'll be right next to the boom so he can see, and the tower so he can see. It can raise up in the air, and then it can also lower down. That's something that you will be constantly using throughout the process. Not so much through the first half of the process, but as you back your way out of the back of the drum, as the blades start to get tighter and the distance between the blades gets less and less, is where you're going to have to, as an operator, really learn to manipulate and control the boom, the back of the boom going up and down like this, the torpedo up and down, and the tower up and down. Those points right there are all to control where this nozzle is hitting inside the drum. It will take a little bit of practice, but if you're pretty competent and you've done it a few times, you'll have it down. The main thing to remember though, you really can't break much of anything. This is all made to support the weight of the boom, fully extended out that direction. If you have the torpedo all the way back, you can still aim that boom and lift the back end of that boom from this point all the way up to its highest point. You can also still lift that tower all the way up to its highest point. So you're gonna, as you work your way out of the back of the drum, you will be doing that. You will be raising the tower, and you will be raising the boom and lowering the boom back in, all to manipulate and control where this nozzle hits. And it takes just a little bit of practice, but it really is something that once you understand that this is the point that you need to control, all the rest of it takes care of itself. Something we went over, I believe, earlier, but again, this is the control panel. When you start the machine, you have to have the remote in there. You have to turn the remote on. Once the remote's on, the screen will come on. It'll allow you to start it just like you're starting a vehicle. Once it starts up, engine's going. Again, it's really difficult to hear when you're standing right next to it, so that's why we're doing this video without it started. Let me get up here. This is a radio antenna right here. It's best to run it if you can while plugged in, but if you don't have it plugged in, there is a battery for the back of the the remote as well. The radio will receive it wirelessly, but best to use the cord. A lot easier. So you're gonna have your remote up here in the tower. Inside the tower, you're going to want to have some fall protection in here. Just general rule of thumb, have a harness. Keep the harness tied to the sides, so that way you can get up and down. As you can see, the door locks, keeps it from going out, so you cannot fall out. You can put a couple of nuts here to keep the door solid if you needed to. There is another shield, plexiglass shield like that. Those shields are easily replaceable. You can get them through blasters, or you can fabricate your own. You have all the fittings that go with it. If you've got a template, you can fabricate your own and however you want to protect yourself, because if you can imagine, you got 20,000 psi or so, you know, 18.5 to 19.5 psi coming out of the front of that torpedo there. You're gonna have debris shooting out. Not huge debris, but it can come out at pretty fast speeds. So when you're up here, of course, good idea to have a hard hat on. Eye protection for sure. Face shield is a good idea to have a face shield if you can, because you're going to be looking from this side. So if you've got a shield right here, you can be behind that shield. As long as you're behind the shield, you're in good shape right here, and you can see through that shield. You can look down in that drum. You got a pretty good view. Sometimes you're going to want to get back here in the back corner here. and you're going to be looking down in that drum. So as an operator, the main thing you're going to be doing, as we talked about earlier, you're going to be controlling this boom, and that basically you're going to be controlling where that nozzle hits inside the drum by utilizing the different hinge points you have to manipulate where that nozzle goes. First one being torpedo. As you can see right here, we talked about earlier, the torpedo can come up. As you can see up in the front there, how far back that nozzle can come. That's at 168 degree on the back side. You're generally not going to be there. But if you can imagine, if that you got it set to come all the way back to that point, and that torpedo is up here, it's going to shoot stuff back at your direction. So just be aware of that. Stuff can come out of the back of the machine. Sometimes it'll land in the water. Sometimes, I mean, you'll feel and you'll see debris on the outside. It's nothing that you have to really be worried safety-wise. As long as you have proper protection, you're in good shape. We have not had or heard of anything that's ever been an issue, but again, you want to use proper protection. This torpedo, this is the opening right here that allows it to come back as far as it needs to come back. Now again, when you have it set to the up position, it's going to come up pretty quickly. But it as the drum turns this direction, the torpedo is going to work itself down and up. So if you imagine you're down when you first enter the drum, set the truck, center the truck where the opening is, right where the torpedo can go all the way down into the front of the drum. The way we generally do that, once we've got it set and we've got it about 2-3 feet away from where the torpedo is, at the edge of the torpedo right now, we chalk the back of the truck and leave the chalks there and put markings on the ground. If you're doing multiple trucks, it's easy. You can pull the truck out and then back the next truck up in the same spot, and you should have you should be generally centered right on where the torpedo's at. So that way you can keep coming in and out without having to do a bunch of backing up and moving forward. But you want to be able to be centered on that opening. Some trucks are different, some of the blades are different. You just never know what you're going to run into, but for the general rule, you want to do that so that way you've got little movement here or there. Once you get that truck centered on the torpedo, you are going to raise the tower from this point, raise that tower up, and this whole mechanism will raise up in the air, and then you're going to tilt your torpedo down. The whole boom, the back end of the boom will raise up. And again, you can do that without even having extended the boom out in any direction, in any way. This is made, it'll hold it. Once you get it to the angle of the drum, then you start to extend the boom into the drum all the way to where that torpedo, the front of the torpedo, touches the front of the drum. So when you know you're getting close to the front of the drum, you want to slow it down. You can go into it pretty fast, but slow it down, kind of inch it in there. Once you touch it, you'll feel the drum, the truck probably push forward just a little. You want to back it off the drum about 6 to 12 inches, the front of the drum. That's where you're going to want to start it. Once you've done that, you turn the machine on, you've got it up to 19.5, you're ready to rock. You've got all your settings set, the angle of the boom, everything is in there properly. You are going to leave it flat, the torpedo flat, and not retract it for about 2 minutes. 2-3 minutes, you're going to run the machine at the oscillation you want it and the speed you want it while the drum is spinning at anywhere from 1.5 to 3. So it hits the front of the truck. It will hit the front of the truck, and then it'll get the front, the face of the drum, and it'll start working itself out. So once you do that, you want to start for about 2 minutes, do that. Then you want to back it out about 2 feet, still without lifting the torpedo. So back it about 2 feet, and you can mark it right here. Once you get that boom all the way into the drum, boom, it's in there. Hit your, leave a quick mark on it like this, and you'll see you can do it. Boom, it's in the back of the drum. Back it out, and you'll have that piece over there pretty close to you. But you're not gonna put the mark here, you're gonna do it right here. So you do the mark there. So I'm at the back of the drum. Boom, I'll put my mark, then I'll back it off to where that mark moves itself to about anywhere from 6 to 12 inches. Boom, I'll leave another mark. All right, So I've got my mark, so I know where it was originally, okay? That's where I first started it at. Run it for about 2 minutes there at full strength with the torpedo down. Once this next mark gets to about 2 feet back, then I want to raise my torpedo. And then you just got to hit the lever, hit the lever up. The torpedo will come up inside the drum. You won't even know it. You won't be able to see it from this point, but you'll know it'll be up. That first part of the drum is pretty cavernous, so it's going to be a little while. Now, once you do that, before you've done that, you've set your auto retract. You've set there's a retract rate. There's different levels. I think it goes from 1 to 8 or 1 to 10, I believe. I'm not exactly sure, but those determine the speed. You're generally going to be anywhere from 3 to 7 on it. If you got about a quarter to a half yard in there, you're going to be anywhere from 3 to 7. The best bet is to start it out, if you got a lot of build, slower, so that way you can do your first pass at a slow rate. And if you do end up going, you still got a little bit of build up left in there, go ahead and speed up the retract rate. It'll auto retract so that way it comes out faster. And it doesn't have to be in there as long. But your first pass, you want to give it enough time, so you don't want to just pull it out too fast. The optimal timing for a half yard or so is anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes. That's pretty ideal timing for half yard to a yard. I mean, depending on how heavy and how old the concrete is, it'll work its way out pretty quick. So if there's not more than, if you're doing this on a normal maintenance schedule, you should be able to get through trucks in 45 minutes to an hour max. As long as you don't have any trucks that have been sitting with a whole bunch of dead weight or dead concrete in it, this thing works. It's really efficient in that regard. Once you start getting more than half yard, anywhere up to a yard, then you might have to make multiple passes at slower speeds because you're not going to get it all off on the first pass. So just know you're going to make multiple passes. But it's so much safer and a lot cleaner, and it will polish the blades. It will not chip or damage the blades at all. So the more times you run through it, you would think it's kind of counterintuitive. You get the chippers in there too many times, and you're worried about, am I replacing a drum? With this machine, you can run it through multiple times, and it's only going to actually make your drum a lot cleaner inside without any damage. So you don't have to worry about how many times you're running it through, other than you're going to be using a little bit more water and a little bit more time, a little bit more fuel. So something to consider. You don't want to run through it too fast where you have to make too many passes, so you want to find that happy medium. And that's something that we can give you some recommendations on, and some things that you'll, over time, just as you do you start to monitor your usage in your trucks, you'll be able to come up with those numbers pretty quick and easy. A good operator is going to make sure that he's on top of that, making sure he has an idea of his time, where he knows where the concrete is inside the truck. And so once he's down in there, he's retracting, he's going to see that torpedo work its way down and up as it works its way through the blade system. Now, as we said earlier, those blades are going to rub on that torpedo, making it kind of go up and down. So when it does that, you want to make sure that that torpedo is not pushing over too far to the right. The drum is going to be spinning clockwise. The torpedo is going to move naturally a little bit as it rides the blades. It's made to ride the blades. It's going to push up and down as required. However, if for whatever reason that operator, you're here and you see that torpedo start to move a little bit too far out of tolerance, you're going to make sure that something might be caught. So what you're going to do is you're going to hit the down on that torpedo control. It'll drop the torpedo quick. It'll drop it. Once the blades turn a little bit, then you can raise it up right away. Now you're going to want to be careful that you don't do it too many times and too often. Kind of get a feel for it. Of course, better safe than sorry. Drop it if you feel like it's coming, that it's pushing over too far. But you'll see, as you're coming through the trucks, you'll start to get a good feel for it. It's going to continuously move back and forth like this. And of course, it's also going to rock its way up and down, because if you can imagine, you've got 20,000 PSI shooting out of that sucker. So it is going to push the truck. The boom is going to move a little bit. The tower is going to rock slightly, but it's all normal. These machines are made to handle the stress. It's standard practice, it's standard usage. The main thing to be aware of, and I cannot stress this enough, if that torpedo starts getting a little too far out of line, you need to drop that torpedo let that blade pass a little, and then you can raise it back up. And then as you work your way out, the torpedo is going to flatten itself out to the next, through that blade, and then it pops up as soon as it gets past that blade. And then it's just repeating the process through the next set of fins. And then as you start to work back to the back of the blades, you're going to have less room in between each system, in between each set of blades, and you're not going to have to go up as high. So the torpedo naturally is only going to go so high as it comes up. That is where you're going to adjust the oscillation to allow your because you're already close enough to the top of the blades, they're not as long, they're not as wide, so that you're going to have less space in between the tip of the blade and the top of the drum, so you don't need to be pushed up as far, but you do want to control where that nozzle goes. Now what you can do to keep that blade from having to ride too far at an angle, you can control, and you will be as you work your way out of the back of the drum, like we said. One of your points of control is here. You can control that by going up and down with it, or set it at the right height all the way up, which is what I'll generally do. I'll set it all the way up, and I'll just control the oscillation. As you can see it hitting the blades, you'll control how far back and how forward it goes. You can have it go just this far or this far, depending on what you need it to do. And you'll see it as it's starting to work its way out. Now you can actually see what you're doing. But you're generally going to want it to keep the torpedo up and let it work itself, rock itself up and down, and control the boom up or down from the backside, which will control where that nozzle is going to go, and the tower up and down. So once you get to the back of the drum, you're going to be controlling, you're going to be really using the joysticks to control the angle of the boom, the height of the boom from the tower, and the oscillation range and speed. And there are knobs that you're going to control. That's where it actually gets kind of fun. The first 30-40 minutes or so of the process is just looking down inside there, making sure it's not popping that side. That torpedo gets caught like that. We haven't done it yet. We've heard stories. It's rare, but it's a costly error. But as the saying goes, you got one job. You got one job. Just make sure that torpedo is staying in the center of the drum, and just control it up and down. If it starts to get too far that way, drop it, and then you just raise it back up and let it do its job until you get to the back. Once you get to the back, then you're looking down into that drum, because you're going to be right there at it. And this is where your face protection and your shield right here comes into play, because you do need to see where you're at right there.